Welcome again to my channel. I hope you have enjoyed the videos that we've been putting out. They're very informative, and I really would like us to share each other's talents. And I think, as I said, there are many Guyanese out there who are brilliant sons and daughters of our country, whether it's within or without Guyana. We are very blessed to have some of the most brilliant minds around the world. And when I look at our current operation, it is really sad that when we speak out against some of the things that government should address, we are called anti-government, we are called all the name in the world. That is not the purpose of these videos, my friends. It is what we should get and what we are not getting. And before I get into this video, I just want to bring up this report by Global Witness that was reported in 2020, a long time ago. What this report is telling us is that what we have given away. And what it says here is that Guyana in 2020, when we only knew of Liza 1 and Liza 2, which is about 2.8 billion barrels of reserve of oil, we were giving up 55 billion, according to their report. And they did a very great commentary and their report. I know some people bashed it, but that's what the nature of the game is. What is important, my fellow Guyanese, is this. When Rafael Trotman entered the scene as a new minister, this is how they described it. He stepped out of a limousine into the sunny spring heat outside Exxon, Texas headquarters. Trotman and two other Guyanese ministers were meeting with Trotman on a ministerial visit. He had flown first class, staying at a pricey hotel, and dined with Exxon exclusive Wolfgang Puck restaurant. This is important. Despite Exxon demands early in the month, Trotman, responsible for signing Guyana's oil license, did not appear to spend his time in Texas negotiating. He was more concerned with visiting, touring Exxon's new glass and steel office. He and his colleagues were very impressed by the company's facilities in keeping Guyana's oil fine samples. What was most striking was the very strong smell of oil that filled that room. And of course, we can go back, we know the history of the agreement. This is important. I want to show you, my fellow Guyanese. According to this report, is the time, well, first before I get the timeline, this is what, according to what they're reporting with only Liza 1 and 2, that if Guyana were to receive 52% of the lifetime income from the reserve, that is 1 and 2, about 2.2 billion barrels of oil, we would have received 168 billion, and Exxon would have received 157. If the production agreement was negotiated to the strength that Guyana had, we would have received about 69% of the total revenue for Liza 1 and Liza 2 only. What is important, my fellow Guyanese, is the timeline here that Global Witness reported. And this is important. In 2015, Exxon due to give up 75% of the Stabroek block. In 2015. In March of 2015, they had finished drilling for Liza 1. On March 4th, before President Ramutar left office, he signed the Kanji license, and April 28th, he signed the Kaichor license. Those are questions people are raising. Why did he sign it when he was exiting office? On May the 11th, after Guyana's election, Trotman replaces Passad as the Natural Resource Minister. This is Robert Passad. On the 20th, Exxon announced Liza 1 find, but did not provide any details of how many barrels. This was important, my fellow Guyanese. In 2015, New York meeting between Tillerson, who was then the CEO and chairman of Exxon, and President Granger, and this was important, new Stabroek block deal was not discussed. Can you believe that? When they already found oil in Liza 1. Look what happened in 2016. Exxon purchased 35% of the Kanchi block. On March 31st of 2016, Exxon finished the Liza 2 drilling. On April the 4th and 5th, Texas meeting between Exxon and GGMC. New Stabroek deal negotiation begins. On April 28th to 30th, Texas meeting between Exxon and Trotman. This is the politicians we elect. I mean, I supported the AFC, but they have been a total disgrace. New Stabroek deal not discussed. You're the minister. They're negotiating the deal, but you have nothing to say 1 month after. On April 11th, that's irrelevant, Nigel Hughes resigned from AFC. On the 25th of July in 2016, Exxon purchased 50% of Kaieteur. And I want to tell my friend who is defending Exxon as if Exxon is this great savior for Guyana, when Exxon purchased Kanchi block 35%, did they pay anything or it was free? When they purchased 50% of Kaieteur, was it free? That is what you're telling us. Because what I'm saying is that when CNOOC and Hess came on board and they purchased 55% of the production in that lucrative Liza 1 and Liza 2, they didn't know the rest yet. Did they purchase it for free? It appears this gentleman is saying that. In 2017, well, let's go back here. On June 27th, Trotman advised he needs more information when negotiating Stabroek deal. Trotman signed Stabroek deal. These are the politicians we're talking about. June 30th, Exxon announces Liza 2 find with 1.4 billion estimate. March 1st, 2017, Exxon purchased 50% of Kaieteur. Oh, it was announced in 2016, but it did an actual purchase in 2017. Guyana signed Stabroek license after signature bonus leak in December of 2017. This is the history. In 2020, Exxon started producing oil in Guyana. What is intriguing, my fellow Guyanese, is what came out of this report as well. And what it's telling us is that countries that produce oil, and please feel free to go through this report, it's really important. Countries that produce oil takes an average of about 60 to 70%, sometimes even more, of the revenue for themselves. What did Guyana get? 12.5 plus 2, 14 and a half. That's what we are getting. And we will get that for many, many years to come, despite all the defenders of Exxon who is saying, oh, we will start get the revenue, big revenue, come 2027, 28. Well, I got good news for you, or bad news. Exxon will continue to use the contract and keep drilling. And guess what? Those costs are recoverable on current revenue. One of my friends was telling me Liza 1 was already paid off. And if that is true, then should we now share 50% of the cost of production taken out from revenue for Liza 1? That will give us substantial revenue. But you know that's not happening because Exxon is taking out 75% of the revenue to recover costs as they continue to drill. That is what we are dealt with. That is what we have. And these defenders that we are talking about that think that when you speak up against these things, it is somehow wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Guyanese, if we don't stand up and demand what we should get, Exxon will be eating our breakfast, our lunch, our dinner, and our snacks. We'll be eating crumbs on the table for many years to come. I was speaking to some Guyanese yesterday. An average person in Guyana earns about $7,000 a day, Guyana. And I was asking the question, how much does it cost for a family of two or three, to live per week? And the answer was about 60, 70,000 to buy food and different things. And we're giving away billions, and we seem happy with that. So what I did, ladies and gentlemen, I brought up an Excel sheet as usual, and I want to show you what I think. Okay, this is the one I did the previous video, and I said 6.9 billion difference is really 6.6. So shouldn't the government of Guyana ask Exxon, where is this 6.6 billion that we're supposed to get based on a 1.9 trillion in revenue for 2022? Is that a fair question? It appears as though some of the defenders don't think it is. But this is what I want to discuss today, my friends. Currently, we are told that by 2027, Exxon will produce 1.2 billion barrels of oil from what they're doing now. If we have 11 billion barrels of reserve, it means if we do 1 million barrels per day, there will be 11,000 days to bring that 11,000 to an end. If we produce 1.2 billion barrels, sorry, not billion, 1.2 million barrels a day, that will be 9,167 days of production. If we were to quantify that into years with 1 million barrels a day, 11 billion barrels will take 30 years to come to an end. So the wells are now dried. After 30 years, the 11 barrels is gone. If we produce 1 million, the numbers are getting us confused. 1 million barrels a day, 11 billion barrels of oil will take us 30 years to complete. If we produce 1.2 million barrels a day with 11 billion barrels in reserve, it will take us 9,167 days or 25 years. So that's the first thing we need to establish, because according to the report, by 2026-27, we'll be producing 1.2 million barrels a day. So that will take us with 11 billion barrel, and they keep getting more. So if this goes up, if this becomes, let's change that. If that becomes 20 billion, what are we looking at? So if we have, let me put this number in here so you will see it. So we have 11 billion, that's 90. Right? So I'm going to make that, okay, so 11 billion barrels will give us 11,000 days. 11 billion barrels with 1.2 million barrels per day will be 9,000 days. Now let me change this formula back to reflect what I have here. So it's equal to 11 billion, and we divide that by the number of barrels per day, which we know it's 11,000 days. The same thing here. If we take 11 billion barrel divide that by 1.2 million barrels a day, that's 9,000 days. Now let's change this to 15 billion and see what happens. And as we speak, they're finding more oil. Now we look at 15 billion barrels of reserve. Now it's 41 years if we do 1,000 barrels a day, a million barrels a day. Or 34 years if you do 1.2 million barrels a day. And this is what we're saying, my fellow Guyanese. As we continue to produce more, we have much more years ahead of us. And when we talk about this, think about the changing energy, that we can go solar and we can go all these things. That is not true. There will be a great percentage of vehicle that might go electric. But guess what? First, to get the electric vehicle, you have to spend 2 and 3 hours to charge up your battery. Who will want to wait which young people will wait 2 or 3 hours to charge their vehicle? And if you're in the middle of the night and you run out of, there's no more energy in your vehicle, then what do? And there's no charging station around. This is not going to happen for a long, long time. And we have sweet, light crude. Our oil is in demand. So we don't have to worry about that. We have many, many, many years of production. So I'm saying, let's do this. Let's get Exxon. And I listened to the Attorney General in Parliament. And Mr. Attorney General, it says, and you read it, the agreement can be changed with the agreement of the contractor. Have we asked the contractor to come back on the table? That's a question the government should tell us. So I'm saying now, my fellow Guyanese, if we got a price of $80 per barrel and we produce 1 million barrels a day, that's $80 million a day. 1 million barrels at $80 per barrel will give us $80 million in revenue. For the entire year, 365 days, that's 29.2 billion, and this is US dollars. If we produce 1.2 million barrels a day at $80 a barrel, that's 96 million US a day, or 35 billion US dollars in the year. Now look at this. There are reports that the price might go up. So if we go to $100 per barrel, look what happened. Revenue has now gone to 36 billion. So if we change that to $100, and they report it will get higher than 100, that's $43 billion in revenue. And this is US per year with $80. So let's go to 75. $75, revenue will be 27 billion with 1 million barrels a day. 75 with 1.2 million barrels a day, it will be 32.8 billion. And this is my proposal, fellow Guyanese. There are many reports, and we see in Guyana, Exxon have these signs that Guyana is getting 50%, 52% of profits. We know that is not true. Yes, 50% of profit is not 50% of revenue. So they're fooling the Guyanese people, telling us, oh, we are getting this substantial amount of money from our oil. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Guyanese, we are not. And this is what I'm proposing now, and I pray that the government of Guyana will follow. And again, when I speak of these things, those who support the government think I'm anti-government. I want to get the PP out of office. I want it to be a minority government. I have nothing to do with that. What I'm suggesting is that this is what we should get from our revenue. So I'm saying Guyana should get 60% of the oil revenue that will remain in our country. That is what we should get. So if we were to have $75 per barrel for 1 million barrels a day, revenue of 27 billion, we will have $16 billion in revenue coming to us. If that number goes to $80 per barrel on average, we will have $17.5 billion coming to us. If we are producing 1.2 million barrels a day, and we get 60% of that revenue, which is the standard. No country in the world has developed if they give away their resource. Saudi Arabia keeps most of their money. Kuwait keep most of their money. UAE keep it. Russia, China, India, Norway, Venezuela, you name those countries that has been developed. Iran, Iraq, Libya, most of their oil revenue stays in their country. And I'm saying, and it's more than 60%. So I'm saying if we get 60% of our revenue, and we should at least, with a 1.2 million barrels a day, with a price of $80 per barrel, with revenue of 35 billion, then we should get 21 billion revenue. If we get 21 billion, my friends, and my next video, I will go through some options, but this is what happened. We get 60%, the oil company gets 40%. So they still have 11.6 billion from 1 million barrels a day, or they will get 14 billion with 1.2 million barrels a day. The cost of production, based on this analysis that I did, remember I did this analysis, it's about 12.2% of revenue is operating cost. So if that is true, and according to the auditor report, that is what it is. The auditor says exactly, and I reported that in my, go and look at the last video if you don't mind. So the actual cost of drilling our oil, the day-to-day operation, it's about 12.2% of revenue. And if that is so, which according to the auditor report is true, I'm putting 15%. 15% will be 4.38 billion. With 1 million barrels a day, 5.2 billion with 1.2 million barrels a day. So they're getting 14 billion, take away 5 billion, they still have 9 billion for themselves for profits and their capital recovery. Guyanese, this is what we need. And with this $21 billion a year that we'll get from our oil revenue, in my next video, I will give some suggestions of what I think we can use it for. In the meantime, stay well. This is only a proposal. We need to have a discussion with Exxon. The agreement says, Mr. Attorney General, that the contract can be changed with the agreement of the contractor. Have we asked the contractor for a meeting to discuss it? We need to start that process now, because 1.2 million barrels a day will start in a few years' time. In my next video, I will continue the discussion. In the meantime, God bless our country, and the best is yet to come. Take care.